Alright, before we get with the anime, this arrived and it's pretty cool. So this is Blaster Master Zero and Blaster Master Zero 2. If you're unfamiliar with Blaster Master, it's the game for the Nintendo, the original NES. And there's been other games made for other systems, but you know, from a distance, I've always appreciated Blaster Master Zero 2 for actually seeming very Blaster Mastery. I'm going to take the sleeve off. You know, I really do like the character designs, and you know, obviously it kind of has a very Mega Man Zero sort of vibe to it, but it's not limited just to that. You can see this limited collector's edition has a certificate of authenticity, edition number 2744 out of 3645. And then you got this. So, internally, Jesus, my throat does not want to clear. Why don't we actually begin by looking at these things, because these are actually really cool. They're pretty heavy. You could throw this at someone and really hurt them. Now, I don't know if it would be like concussion level stuff, but there's some serious weight to these things. They're pretty cool. These are the tank thing that you drive. So one of the things about Blaster Master that's been really neat is you drive a tank that has a turret that actually can aim up and stuff, very flexible, but it's also a jumping tank. And I don't know, these designs are pretty cool, just in general, and this isn't even, you know, talking about if they're cool for gun tanks. But in my experience for jumping gun tanks, these have been really good, and that's kind of why I've never been a... Well, I say never, as if I've done a whole lot, but I'm not a big fan of, like, watching my brother play Blaster Master 2, just because, like, something about that version of the tank does not feel very inspired. You see behind these we have NES cartridge thingies, and these are decorative, because if you look here, there's now things sticking out, which is kind of interesting. It makes me wonder if they're specially printing this sort of plastic with like modern day 3D printers just to kind of get the same look. And you got these, and I've already done a lot of the work to open them, but pretty cool. We have the... So all of these come with a copy of the soundtrack, a poster, which I've not exploded. Oh, okay, I did not know I would successfully pull that out, and no, Nintendo Switch copy of the game. You know, I'm a big fan of my physical releases, so, you know, Limited Run Games really likes customers like me who apparently can't close the things they open. I don't know that I want to get into too much more detail. I guess if it's worthwhile to open this, it would be to take a look at the, you know, take just a little peek at the game cover thing. And I've never played either, and I've watched my brother play, or play would probably not be quite the right word since he's been a speedrunner. But I've seen my brother go through Zero 2, but it would be kind of nice to kind of play them myself and get a feel for the stories, because it feels like they do a pretty good job of making the stories interesting. A good balance of what the original game was and wasn't, because the original game is complicated just because there's Japanese and US versions, and the story is completely different between them, and I got the impression from my brother that Zero went with a kind of hybrid approach, which is kind of cool. Anyways, you know, this is a pretty cool thing in general. You can see it's nice and shiny, but we also have another game. I decided to pick up Super Mario 3D World for the Switch, and Bowser's Fury, which, you know, you could jokingly think of as Bowser's Furry, but if you think about it, then you're thinking about Fursona, but wait, Bowser's already a scaly or something. So then what would a furry look like? Well, in Super Mario 3D World, that would be him wearing the cat suit, which, you know, Cat Bowser we have seen, but then it raises a more interesting question of, is Bowsette a reverse persona? So you just called it a persona, and so Bowsette is a persona character? I don't know. Anyways, we'll go ahead and set that aside and go through what these videos are usually about. Except, of course, we're going to have to be careful with this first one because this is a hentai DVD. Oh, God. Just making sure, as I pull it out, that it's not, there we go. I want to be careful with the receipt there. Oh, wow, it just floated in an annoying place. So yeah, First Love hentai DVD. Don't remember if I got that on Blu-ray or not. I might have to double check my orders, but yeah, it's all good. And then we got these copies, which I successfully opened this one without going through the flap. For a while there, I was wondering if I accidentally had another hentai DVD in this release that I wasn't aware of, because there was something about that that looked a little naughty, I guess, for lack of better words. But, well, I don't know. Let's go ahead and begin with that, since it was on top and I was commenting about it. Miss Machiko. She's intelligent, intriguing, and totally inappropriate. Well, at least she, you know, kind of lives up to her appearance. So, audio, Japanese with English subtitles only. Oh, and this is 95 episodes in standard definition. So yeah, this is one of those things where it's just really nice that we have Discotheque Eastern Star bringing us more niche anime. You know, they're not completely niche. I was just trying to think that looks, is it accidental or is it kind of purpose? You know, you would think that totally inappropriate kind of suggests that she does this stuff on purpose. Are these Miss Machiko? Is she a school teacher? That guy doesn't look like a school kid. Huh. Well, it's 95 episodes, so it must have been at least successful in some degree. So it's not like some forgettable one-off OVA that just never took off or something like that. Bananya and the Curious Bunch, which I think is not one that I've currently got. I think this is a sequel, but I don't really know Bananya well enough to know, and I, you know, just kind of order stuff haphazardly is the word I'm throwing out right now, but English dub. Get ready for a whole bunch of feline fun. Curious Bunch, 13 episodes. I should probably look into what I got before, because I don't really know if I did this. Because, you know, Eastern Star Discotheque releases stuff that sometimes gets missed, and sometimes there's duplicates in there. Lupin the Third, The Columbus Files, which, you know, this has been released before on DVD. I think this is my first Blu-ray. Explorer. We've got English dub. I'm trying to remember, because we've seen some Lupin releases from them that aren't English dubbed, if I'm not mistaken. Even though there's a lot of Lupin content that is dubbed. You know, they're all about going for those onesie twosies that I guess it's more accurate to say they tend to be thorough. That's right. The Lupin Third stuff does tend to have a slightly bigger movie poster-like thing in the middle there. Ooh. Next up, we have Acro Bunch, The Quest for Treasure. I'm just trying to think if I've seen that before in the video with all the mechas by size, or robots by size. Although a lot of the stuff aren't mechas or robots. No, they do. I mean, there's a couple things in there for reference. Here's back. Japanese subtitle only. All 24 episodes in standard definition, which probably means, a single disc. It's interesting that these graphics feel a little more faded, but I'm guessing, this is one that maybe isn't as big of a franchise, I guess. Next up, we have JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind Part 2. Okay. Yeah, that's probably Part 1 right there. Yeah, I see Part 1 back that way. Okay. I couldn't tell if this had fallen down there or not. Region A. Just down here, yeah. 3-disc Blu-ray set episodes. English and Japanese audio. I was just thinking there's something weird about his face. Not bad weird. Just something about the way it was drawn. I've definitely seen that stand before in VR chat. Okay, there's a little damage there, but whatever. I'm also quite surprised that I remembered to call it a stand and didn't accidentally call it a persona. Because right now, the only difference I know of between the two is one is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and the other one is Persona. Oh, and last but not least, Toilet Bound Hanako-Kun, the complete series. Oh, a particular art card. So let's take this to see some sexy in. Ooh la la. And if I remember correctly, although I don't remember the names too well, Hanako-Kun is the ghost that haunts a toilet or something. Oh, regions A and B, so this could be imported. We've got English dub. Be careful what you wish for. I am definitely curious about this. Less morbidly curious about it than I am of the Kisses, which, spoiler alert, I still haven't seen. But definitely curious. Let's go. Oh. I think you can kind of see that it flips. Looking at it in person, it gives it a very 3D look. Guess I don't want to do that too much. Got disc 1 and disc 2. And pretty much its own little thing on the inside. So pretty cool little release. Just thinking if I wanted the digital code card to maybe be underneath the lenticular, but oh well. Here's this week's anime DVD collection update. Okay. Good amount to talk about this time, and this is, there's a good return to normalcy going on here from the last couple of weeks. But I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But first, so I didn't finish No Guns Life Season 1. I did watch one more episode. maybe last night, maybe the night before. I'm not sure. I do intend to finish season 1 here. And I don't know that I have much to comment about regarding the one episode I watched, since it was kind of an in-between between two major events happening. You know, the one that I saw when I last watched this, and the one that's about to happen, set up for the next stuff. So, you know, in that regard, pretty good. But I do need to watch the last handful of episodes to get a good feel for what season 1 is like, if I want to say anything about it. And actually, I'm going to change the order of these a little bit because, you know, I guess I have similar commentary about My Hero Academia Season 4, where, you know, I got together with my Friday friend, finally. Well, I mean, I say finally, but it's been a long couple of weeks. And we watched a handful of episodes of this. So, some of my thoughts are, it was definitely set up so that the first episode of this probably should have been something that came out with part 1. Okay, I'm just going to have to record this in bursts, I think. So the first episode on Season 4 Part 2 resolved for real the stuff that was at the end of Season 4 Part 1. Should have been there, had the same opening. Season 4 Part 2 second episode was the next opening, so it was intended to be that, but it was okay, and it was all just stuff coming down from the end of Season 4 Part 1. Editing this video is going to be very interesting. Orphan. So, I only watched the first 4 episodes of this, and it's a pretty weak start. I call it a bad start, but I don't want you to confuse that with me saying it's a bad show. It's definitely one of those things. So, from a distance, you've probably heard things about how stories should unfold, and the truth of the matter is, you should always take a step back from that, because not everything you watch is necessarily a story and necessarily interesting because it's a story. So, the storytelling faults this would have in the first 4 episodes really fail at a higher level than storytelling faults. You really need the show to give the audience an impression of, oh, this is what I'm going to be watching this because I'm going to be getting some of this. And, you know, it can change over the show or run out, but the idea is you want your audience to be interested in the show and to follow it, you know, want to follow it or something like that. And I feel like this show does a really bad job of that. I've watched 4 episodes, and I can't really tell you what I feel like it's going to be like beyond this point. And now, to be fair, it is possible that what it covers in the first 4 episodes may have been manga material that was turned into the entire old Orphan show, because there's little bits and pieces that are familiar, but I don't remember the show well enough to say for certain. But impressions are there, which makes me think the show as an entirety might have been based on maybe a smaller part of the manga. Maybe it was inspired by the manga, and this is trying to be more faithful. And maybe that means that the first 3 or 4 episodes are kind of globby, because some of the things that would have been there that would have been interesting that were made into the original show are like, well, we don't need it this time because we need to get to the material that is beyond that would have made the original show more interesting if it went beyond what it did do, or something like that. And so, you know, there's that possibility there. As for what was there, it is pretty bad storytelling-wise, because, like, one of the first bad things it does is it kind of gives you a flash of all these characters and their names, and we as the audience don't care, because we don't know any of these characters. We don't know why them reacting to anything or us seeing them react care. And to make matters worse, most of the characters it introduces are not very interesting design-wise. I mean, you look at this and you're like, those are some interesting character designs. They are. You could probably tell who that character is, even though, like, the art style's changed, or you blank out the face or something like that, but it's good distinctives stand out. But they have these other characters that are basically all just, oh, a person wearing a robe. And sometimes the only way you can tell them apart is because that one has red hair and that one has black hair. And there's this silhouette idea where a good character design is one that you can recognize based on silhouette. And it feels like most of the characters that are important to at least these first 4 episodes fall in this category of, oh, it's a man with a robe. I don't know who they will be. So, You've got that. You've got names you don't care about, and names that might also not matter past episode 4. I can't really tell. And you know, it doesn't give us a good hook to say, okay, I want to watch the main character. Is this a person that's going to grow? They say he's powerful, but do we see him being powerful? We see him kind of having a different opinion from these people in robes, but we don't really get a feel for why we should be cheering for him and not thinking of him as an idiot, which... Oh, okay, so... Now, the original Orphan show set up the side characters that would travel with our main character, and we don't really get a good impression of them. They kind of introduce them, but they're not a part of the main events that happened in the first 4 episodes. So, that doesn't really step. So, as the story that they introduce within the first 4 episodes that might have been a major component of the first series is all completely wrapped up within that period of time. The main character, we haven't really been established from a storytelling perspective, whether or not he's a character we expect to see grow, whether he's a character we expect to see bring awesome things to people or anything like that, and we don't have any impression of what the side characters are even like. So, you know, that's why I say it's bad. It's not like bad as in like I can't watch this. It's more bad in that it does a bad job of giving you a reason within the first 4 episodes, which is usually pretty good considering that's a third of the content here at least. 14, 11. I can't read that number. So, you know, it probably, again, my guess is it gets better after that because it's probably trying to retread grounds of what was there before. My big fear is I don't remember the original well enough to remember if the dwarfs were common characters, because I actually really hate them. Not like the race, but the 2 characters that they introduced, these are dwarves. They look like little kids, but they're dwarves, and they're really annoying. I don't really find them entertaining. But the other characters, the apprentice and the rich girl, yeah, I mean, I think those were probably the characters that people probably liked back in the 90s, so I don't know. Last but not least, Ascension of a Bookworm, which, you know, once I reached the point where I was like, I gave Orphan a shot, I'm curious about this, well, you know, of course I'm glad I watched this. If any of you are familiar with this, you probably know that it's a pretty strong, pretty great show. I mean, if I was just talking about the failings of Orphan, this one kind of succeeds pretty well. It establishes our main character has a goal in life. You know, she likes to read books. She came from, you know, she was in Japan. She was a Japanese girl, or rather lady. I'm not sure if lady's the right word either. But she was, you know, not a little kid. She was a person that had been reading lots and lots and lots and lots of books. That's what she liked to do. And she gets resurrected as this 5-year-old peasant girl in a medieval fantasy world. And this one is very... I'd like to say it's much more based in reality, but it still has its magical, fantastical components. But the purpose of the show is that, you know, she has struggles, and a lot of shows like to skip over some of these struggles. You know, I think a really good example is the Saga of Tanya the Evil. So that and this are both resurrection isekai, where the main character dies and gets resurrected in another world. There are differences, of course, where Tanya, you know, gains consciousness at maybe the time a baby would start gaining consciousness. Whereas the main character, Mine, ends up becoming the Mine we know from the perspective of the character being 5 years old. And but in Saga of Tanya the Evil, you know, they kind of present the catalyst as being this disagreement between, or maybe not a disagreement, but this conversation between Being X and Tanya. I don't remember what they probably never said what their name was prior to Tanya. But you know, this idea where if God wanted people to worship him, then people shouldn't have it so well off, because when they're well off they don't need it. And Being X is like, so if I resurrected you in trying times, then blah 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 blah. And it's interesting that Saga of Tanya the Evil kind of isn't about exploring that idea per se, because the first thing it does is, okay, their little kid, they kind of recognize it as being similar to Germany pre-World War I, seeing some of the signs of World War I-y stuff's going to happen, and they're using their knowledge of the future of what happened in our world to kind of guide what they need to do. And basically, if it was exploring the idea of the hardships that was being talked about by Being X and Tanya, then it wouldn't have done the step where it's like, well, fortunately, this is a world with magic. And fortunately, the system is a meritocracy. So those fortunately ones, those are really about this show getting to what it really wants to do, which is to create this juxtaposition between the cute little lolly character who does these horrific, I say Nazi-like things, but this is pre-Nazi Germany, so it's not exactly that. But Tanya still facilitates essentially war crimes, but technically not. Some of the ideas are, Tanya remembers ideas on how treaties were worked around through technicalities, which basically meant you did the things that the treaties were in spirit meant to stop, but you are able to do them anyways. And a lot of self-justification, and the point is to create not really this struggle that Being X and Tanya talked about so much as creating a war against Tanya, between Tanya and Being X, sort of, for lack of better words. And, that's all fun and great. But, there's this tendency for shows to kind of have these convenient skips in there, which I think what makes A Sentence of a Bookworm good is it doesn't skip those, but it also doesn't, drag the audience face first into some of the less fun concepts of it. So what I basically mean is she's a 5-year-old peasant girl who has no access to books, who wants books, who doesn't know anything about the world, but she's a 5-year-old girl, so it's kind of expected she wouldn't know, and she's a frail and sickly one at that, so she wouldn't be able to know and explore. And she has a family that's surprisingly open, so like it's very common for people to have to deal with things in day-to-day life to just say, no, I don't know why you're wanting to do that, you have to do it this way, because that's what they needed to do to survive, or something like that. And so in that regard, her parents have actually been pretty flexible. They notice the change in behavior, but they don't care because they're just glad that their daughter's up and about and doing stuff again, things like that. So it's really kind of set up where the main character's in an ideal environment where things aren't very ideal in their favor, but some of their knowledge and ideas get a chance to express themselves, which is, it's really not that, people not having that stuff is bad. It's when they don't get to express themselves when they have stuff, that's when things can get really frustrating watching a show. And this show is really smart about balancing that stuff so that, mine is able to express ideas in situations where it makes sense, where, given the characters they've established, yeah, they're kind of accepting. And it doesn't lean very heavily on the, this is a world with magical stuff happening in its stuff. So this isn't, well, she learns how to abuse this magical system, per se. There's a little bit to it there, but nothing really bad. Instead, it's more like there's fantastical elements in there that allow the character to kind of understand the alienness of their world, but also to kind of find other ways of doing the same thing in that world that have been done in this world in certain historical contexts. And the meritocracy thing is kind of interesting because the truth of the matter is the value of some of the ideas of modern day stuff just applied there to a medieval fantasy stuff in and of themselves have value, and because of that, it really is kind of set up where mine is setting up a meritocracy, where the value of her ideas is just too phenomenal for people to not have to give them merit. Especially since they play her off as kind of this, character that kind of understands herself and holds herself well, so like they're really confused about this 5-year-old girl who's having complex conversations with adults, although I think at that time she was 6. they don't really give you ages too much, or so much as telling you that before, I think it was their 7th birthday, they get baptized, and you can kind of follow from that because the character's in there for 2 years, just like 5-ish at the very beginning of it, or something like that. And so it really is kind of great, especially since, you know, you have other shows that kind of introduce this idea of introducing modern ideas to a medieval fantasy world, but usually they have to take place from a perspective of the character being in a privileged place. So as a really quick example, No Game No Life does this with, oh yeah, you need to do crop rotations here, and here's a new economic system, blah, blah, blah. But in order for that one to do it, it just kind of made them, you know, king and queen. Or rather, they had the goal of becoming king and queen, and then, you know, putting that stuff down to immediately make things better for everybody immediately, or something like that. And that's pretty cool, but it's not really an exploration of the day-to-day life of the impact of some of that stuff, which some of Ascendants of a Bookworm seems to touch on. A little bit here, a little not bit there, but it works out pretty well. And its season finales are actually really neat, although the season 1 finale is neat in a very different way, but it's kind of hints as to stuff that kind of deviate from that idea of mine being a peasant girl that kind of has to, you know, prove her own way. So like I said, you know, a lot of shows take those characters and get them into positions of privilege really quick so that they can do things, and this show's interesting because mine built her way up, but there is an element introduced at the end of season 1 which, you know, allows for kind of jump up, I guess, for lack of better words. And it's pulled off really well, really neat. I don't know if I want to describe it too much more than that, other than to say that it was there, and that's definitely one of the neat moments of the show, but there's a lot of them all throughout it. And the last episode just kind of had a really neat, touching moment to it that I don't know if I want to go into more details about, but I was pretty touched. I would like there to be more, but I could kind of see where seasons 1 and 2 would be what they intended to have there, because the truth of the matter is, you know, these 2 seasons establish that mine is a person that will change the entire face of their world if her knowledge is used certain ways, but it's really up to the people around her because that brain is only full of books. So, pretty cool. Alright, and still working on that. So, the update on the whole Texas stuff. So, I finally got my water back Saturday morning. It was turned on for about an hour and a half Friday, but they found another leak. Basically, the problem is lots of burst pipes all over the place, and the plumbers had some buildings which were perfectly fine, and other buildings like my building where they had to turn water on. Ah shit, there's another leak, let's turn it off again. Rinse and repeat. So it pretty much took them most of the day of Friday just to get this apartment in a state where it looked good, but then there was just one more leak and they had to take care of that Saturday morning when they came back. So, water's back. You know, I had flow issues, but a whole lot of that turned out to be, yeah, okay. So, yeah, there was calcium buildup in the pipes, and the maintenance guys were able to flush most of that through. Hot water's still a little low, and, you know, that's actually what's going on and interrupting this video, and it's going to cause me to have to edit a whole lot of it. Because basically, they determined they're going to go ahead and replace the hot water heater. And I let them make that decision. It's their hot water heater, it's their apartment, you know, I'm just living in it, right? And, you know, that's what's going on. So, there's still little things going on here and there to get everything back to normal. There's still drywall, because I helped the plumbers by pointing out that I did see a leak in my water heater closet, and it's outside on the porch, so, you know, that's why things are really bad here, right? And they couldn't tell if it was my floor or the floor above, so they had to take some drywall out, and somebody's going to come back later to replace that. And I thought that would happen for the water heater replacement, but I guess the guys to replace the water heater are here, and so things are nice and complicated. But for the most part, you know, I'm back to drinking water the way I used to, cooking food the way I used to, So things are pretty much back to normal, and that's pretty good. So if you're kind of curious about the numbers, so I don't think I'm the worst off by any regards, but I didn't have power for just under 80 hours, and I think I did the math. It was something like just under 246 hours without running water, and that's just a little over 10 days, which isn't the worst thing out there, but it's just like, yeah, that was an interesting experience. I wouldn't want to go through it again. It'll probably happen again to some, hopefully smaller degree if it does. Or, the next time, maybe they can really do the rolling power outages and all that stuff. But dust is still settling from all the craziness from here, but, I'm on the up and up, and I was actually able to hang out in VR chat last night until some of my batteries died, which I haven't been able to do for the past 2 weeks. So, good stuff. Good stuff. There was some good anime, there was some good recovery. Okay. Yeah, basically, stuff's going on right now. I'm trying to make sure I help them as much as I can. And this is my only opportunity to record this video, so that's why I was trying to do this. So, guess this means I should really wrap this up. Y'all, have a nice week.